Good morning and welcome to the Opposition Sunday morning press briefing. I am Anita Haynes, Member of Parliament for Tabaquite, and I am joined this morning by my colleagues, Member of Parliament for Mayaro Rushton Parry and Senator Wade Mark, the leader of the opposition bench in the Senate. This morning, as is customary, the opposition will bring to the forefront key issues facing the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. As we enter 2023, it is our hope as the loyal opposition that Trinidad and Tobago will find itself in a better space. And in order to do so, we have to understand the issues facing our country, where we are now and where we intend to go in the future. And so we are here to bring to the forefront those issues, as well as the position of the United National Congress and our plans and policies to take our country further into the future. So I pass my colleague on, MP Parry, who will deal with key issues in the economy this morning.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament for Tabaquite, my colleague, MP Haynes. Good morning to members of the media, the viewing and listening public on our various digital media platforms. I want to thank journalists for their presence this morning, and I also wish to congratulate all of you for your ongoing work in keeping the nation informed as we navigate through these very difficult times here in Trinidad and Tobago. On behalf of the United National Congress, I wish you further professional and personal successes in 2023. This morning, I would like to discuss the government's continued mishandling of matters of trade and industry and its disastrous performance in 2022, and why, unless we have real and substantive changes in 2023, this year can prove to be even more catastrophic for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Before I begin, I'd like to remind the population that the economic crisis that we are facing today didn't start overnight. It has been brewing ever since this government took office in 2015. And there is one particular event that I wish to draw to your attention that happened early in 2015. That is when the then acting President Christine Kangaloo illegally removed the central bank governor, Jawala Rambaran, from his post. I'll tell you why that is significant. Ever since then, the central bank, which is responsible for independent, and I want to stress, independent monetary policy, has now become a proxy for the Minister of Finance, who continues to steer this nation down a path of economic ruin. I know my colleague Senator Mark will speak more on that later on. Ladies and gentlemen, we have begun 2023 against the backdrop of the planned imposition of the most severe increase in electricity rates ever introduced in the Caribbean. Let me be clear. Rising electricity rates will mean thousands of small and medium-sized businesses will be turning their lights off. The government may feel they are creating more revenue, but the reality is hundreds of thousands of people in this country will not be able to see their way when the lights go off. At no time in the history of the region has there been a hike in electricity rates of up to 65% for residential customers and 128% for commercial and industrial users. Now, what does that mean? Supermarkets where you have to buy your food, their electricity rates are going to double or more. The warehouses that they store these goods in are going to be charged more for electricity. Factories that are making, that those who are manufacturing stuff locally here for us, their cost is going to rise, and that cost is going to be transferred to you, the consumer. That is the tale that we have to deal with coming into 2023. With this government's continued failure to outline a clear plan to deal with inflation as well as with the erosion of independent voices at the central bank, our nation, ladies and gentlemen, is now facing the real and frightening prospect of the worst cost of living crisis in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. I also want to remind you that increases in rates and tariffs for the Water and Sewerage Authority services are also impending. That's coming. There is also the impending arrival of the property tax, which will further hurt everyone, from businesses to homeowners to renters. In the midst of all this crisis, ladies and gentlemen, there is the continuous uncertainty by the government as to whether 2023 we will see a further jack-up in the price of fuel. Ladies and gentlemen, in the best of times, such harsh increases would have adverse effects on the cost of doing business and consumers' purchasing power, and would cause more domestic suffering. But this is not the best of times, ladies and gentlemen. It's far from it. These rate increases are being imposed on us, while Trinidad and Tobago is undergoing its worst economic and social crisis since the mid-1980s. At that time, ladies and gentlemen, unemployment and poverty were at record levels. Public officers were denied pay increases, and nuisance taxes were imposed on virtually everything that moved. Life had become so desperate that many people abandoned their homes and businesses, packed up and fled the country. You would recall that the real estate sector collapsed, and when the real estate sector collapsed, you have a domino effect on every sector of the economy. Sadly, I fear that history is about to repeat itself. Today, the economic disaster is equally grave, and the reason is similar: gross mishandling of the economy by a PNM regime. Members of the media, as we forecast the trade and industry sector for 2023, we must be guided by the circumstances of 2022. I wish to remind the national community that every economic sector declined last year. Unemployment grew, the debt burden increased, and we are no better in food sufficiency. There was not a single measure to diversify the economy, even though the government continues to pay lip service to the overdue need to wean the country away from our over-reliance on the energy sector. The financial surplus that the finance minister reported recently was the direct result of the ongoing international geopolitical issues and have nothing to do with any initiative, creativity of this Rowley-led administration. If we place that windfall aside, ladies and gentlemen, we will see that Trinidad and Tobago, our economy remains in free fall, and some sectors like tourism and agriculture are still in negative territory. Under this PNM administration, the economy has become dysfunctional. Let me ask you this. From 2015 to 2022, what new sources of wealth has any policy direction or decision taken by this administration? Have you heard of any? Have you seen any? Have you felt any? Well, I tell you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, there has been none. The point-of-care operations are still mothballed, and the Point Lisas Industrial Estates continues to bear and hold some characteristics of a white elephant that continues to grow. I also wish to tell you that the recent administrative restructuring, and let me be clear with this, the administrative restructuring of the Train 1 at Atlantic LNG will have no bearing on production and exports. So don't let them come with that as some grand initiative that is going to miraculously take the estate out of where it's at. The government has still not created an enabling environment to assist the manufacturing sector in improving production and boosting exports. Generally, ladies and gentlemen, the private sector has ceased investing locally because of the horrible state of crime and reduced consumer demand. You would recall the recent forthright comments by one of our key entrepreneurs in this country, Mr. Derek Chin, about the huge impact of crime on the business community. But there are other reasons. Trinidad and Tobago remains at the bottom of the global index with respect to the ease of doing business. Routine things like registering a business or obtaining water and electricity connection still takes months, if not and we still lag behind most countries. Our Caribbean neighbors are leaping ahead of us, Barbados and Jamaica. The single window neighbors are leaping ahead of us, Barbados and Jamaica. The single window for getting approvals, business approvals, which was introduced by the Kamla Persad-Bissessar government, has been totally abandoned. The reversal is so bad that there is red tape throughout the entire regulatory system. And let me give you one example that is happening today. The company's registry has been down since December the 9th because the computer server crashed. And apparently there's nobody to fix it. That means no document relating to any company can be filed or researched. That includes many incorporations, company searches, filing of annual returns and notices, which all have penalties associated with it. So the entire company registry has ceased operating because a computer server needs to be fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, that is symbolic of the government's administration of the public sector. That is governance P&M style. In addition to the foreign exchange crisis that remains serious, the ports are still inefficient today. And the government has refused to introduce the procurement legislation. They have found 10,000 reasons to delay it. And I tell you, that there is a suspect and a very worrying reason why this legislation is not coming before to be proclaimed by the president. The Trinidad and Tobago economic investment climate at this time is the worst it has ever been in decades. It is no surprise that according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development and other reputable international agencies, Trinidad and Tobago is experiencing a reversal with respect to direct foreign investment. In 2021, the flight of investment out of Trinidad and Tobago amounted to over $439 million. Compare that to 1.5 billion US in investments into the country every year from 2012 to 2014. During those years, Trinidad and Tobago was the friendliest investment destination per capita in the Western Hemisphere. there were several appealing reasons that would have created a facilitative environment, that being the leadership of Kamla Persad Bissessar and her administration. In a few short years, ladies and gentlemen, Trinidad and Tobago has reversed from a major net investment capital to an outflow in investors. Just as a sample, in recent years, we have seen the departure of ArcelorMittal, Lever Brothers, and a host of other foreign players. Not a single investor of note has set up shop here. Through all of this, the cost of food prices has gone up by around 50% between 2017 and 2022. And this is happening in an environment where there is a virtual freeze on wages. As you are aware, disturbingly so, that vegetable prices soared for this Christmas. And it happened because of the recent floods and the rising cost of fertilizers. But you know what? The government has made no effort in boosting food production. And our annual food bill in 2023 has not wavered from that 5.5 to 6 billion TT dollars per year. The Prime Minister boasts that he supports the plan to create food security that has been proposed by regional leaders, Mia Mottley and Dr. Ifran Ali. But let's see what's happening in the region. Guyana, Barbados, and other Caribbean countries have defined and identified specific measures to improve the production of vegetables, fruits, livestock, and poultry, and to boost agro-processing and aquaculture. What they've done is that they have placed strict timelines for delivery. They have issued appropriate instructions to their technical officers to smoothen the processes for our agricultural investors. They are working aggressively on export markets. These leaders, ladies and gentlemen, are determined that the Caribbean region must be in a position to feed its people within a reasonable period. For them, that is a major priority. In contrast, this Rowley-led government has not done a single thing, and local consumers still have to depend on the importation of almost 90% of what we consume. The forecast by the Food and Agriculture Organization is for increased global food prices in 2023 because of urgent issues associated with climate change, the supply chain, and the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. They estimate that some food items would cost more than 10% this year. Generally, as put out there by the World Economic Forum, global inflation is projected to rise to 6.4% this year. This carries, ladies and gentlemen, major implications for Trinidad and Tobago as an importer of goods and services and a place where prices go up every Monday morning. In addition, COVID-19 remains a clear and present danger, and we are all aware of the critical negative impact this disease could, can, and continues to have on all matters of trade and industry. The upshot of all of this is that we would all have to dig deeper into our pockets to pay for food and other essentials, because Trinidad and Tobago is a land of price takers and subject to all international vagaries. While putting food on the table would rise steadily, the authorities are doing nothing to create food sufficiency. The government is inactive on an elementary matter as simple as clearing water courses to prevent the flooding destruction of our food crops by our hardworking farmers. The flooding in this country that we suffered a few weeks ago damaged millions of dollars of food. There's a further economic dilemma that is pending and is going to grow this year, which is the state of our small and medium enterprise sector, which was basically decimated during the COVID-19 crisis. And I can tell you that sector is a far way from returning to its former glory. I wish to remind the population that prior to the pandemic, there were about 18,000 SMEs with a total of about 250,000 workers. And this sector was contributing about 30% of our gross domestic product. SMEs are always a crucial pillar to any economy. After the post-pandemic, or that post-pandemic period, thousands of businesses were unable to reopen. To a large extent, because of the severe credit conditions. So SMEs could weather the COVID storm. And I want to remind you that when the governor of the central bank sent a letter to the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago making certain, sent a letter to the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago making certain suggestions to ease the blow on our business community. That letter was tossed out some window of Frederick Street and into some rubbish bin somewhere. Whereas in Barbados, the Prime Minister sent clear instructions to the governor of the central bank to make certain commercial banking instructions happen to make sure they soften the blow to the small business sector. Every other modern country ensured that loans were deferred, that there was payroll support, and that borrowing terms were reduced. But not yet. Not in Trinidad and Tobago. It was a suggestion, and the banks decided it was up to them to decide how far and how deep and how broad to make these concessions available. And as small and medium-sized businesses went under, banks, as reported in the newspaper, declared historic profits. And some of our large enterprises expanded at the cost of the closing of thousands of small businesses. That is the inequity that our SME sector endured while the government remained apathetic to the crisis. The year 2023 has met us where we left off, with our SME sector struggling in a country of reduced purchasing power, and our unemployment rate keeps trudging along higher and higher. Small and medium-sized businesses also have to foot the cost of security measures to protect their operations, their customers, and their employees. There have been no budgetary measures to level the playing field, attract investments, and encourage economic investments to guide and aid prosperity in this land. The government recently passed legislation with respect to the scrap iron industry that would make the operations even more challenging for the small man. Now, we believe in a structured industry, but if one listened to the debate as represented in the parliament, we highlighted several areas that the government should reconsider to soften the blow. Clearly, that did not happen, and the rest is history. It is now law. There is this tardiness by the state. You boast of a $2 billion surplus, but we still have hundreds of businesses waiting for their tax refunds, their value-added tax refund. That remains a very nagging issue, and it will continue to affect our entire commercial sector because this interferes with cash flow and its investment portfolio. An investment creates jobs. On top of all these distressing factors, ladies and gentlemen, is that the government seems to be making no attempt to confront crime, which is a scourge that continues to destabilize our entire society and bring severe impact to our commercial sector. Up to yesterday, we still have armed and dangerous thugs roaming free, as indicated by the issue with the manager at Neil and Massey. More and more businesses would close up shop and seek greener pastures, creating a further downward spiral of joblessness and poverty. That is what the trade and industry environment looks like as we greet 2023. That is a deeply disturbing scenario as we move into the first quarter of 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, with all criticisms, the UNC, under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, we have always prescribed workable solutions to our respective national crises. We just don't come here and complain. We strongly urge the government to examine the root causes of crime and to implement measures to move our at-risk youths away from laws. And I am not saying that we must go and have consultations for the next 5 years, but the government must revisit the comprehensive work of Professor Selwyn Ryan and his study on crime and enforce the relevant recommendations that was made. The matter of leadership in the police service must be settled, and the service must be provided with an essential crime fighting kit, including modern intelligence gathering, operational CCTV camera systems, and a clear and creative border patrol facility. Prison reform, speeding up the performance of the judiciary, the police disciplinary procedures, and youth remedial systems must be among a package to be implemented within the next 3 to 4 months into 2023. The government must get serious about food production and set up clear time-bound goals. Generous incentives must be provided to our farmers, and more farmlands of Caroni 1975 Limited must be made available to our agriculturalists. The formation of agricultural estates is a priority. The government must stop the old talk on diversification and work aggressively on boosting certain sectors with growth and export prospects. The manufacturing sector deserves a transparent and fair operating environment, which includes reliable availability of foreign exchange and tax incentives for retooling and modernizing. There must be a serious effort to end the backdoor contraband trade, which speaks clearly to the ports and the way how these items are getting into our economy. The distribution of VAT returns must become a priority. The allocation of foreign exchange must be done equitably. Reviving our SME sector should become a frontline matter for the government, since it carries boundless potential for the creation of jobs, emerging communities, and encouraging creativity. There's an urgent need to reform the business relationship between banks and their commercial customers to ensure that clients, especially SMEs, do not go under while financial institutions continue to report higher and higher profits. The government must resume tripartite discussions, but this time, treat them with the seriousness and urgency that they deserve. Productivity must be on our agenda. An economic development advisory board should be reinstituted, comprised of independent, knowledgeable, and experienced experts, that when they make the report, it doesn't end up at the bottom of a trash basket. Their mandate should be to present short and medium-term policy advice for improving and sustaining our economy, establishing export-oriented industries, creating jobs, and the key thing here, lifting our most vulnerable people out of extreme poverty. As always, the UNC, the United National Congress, under the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar, is prepared to play its role in kickstarting all sectors of this country. We have presented several proposals during the budget debate and during our exchanges with the media and the national community. Our economic circumstances are dire and require urgent intervention in order to save Trinidad and Tobago from further social and economic crisis. We are sitting on a powder keg that could be diffused by effective and timely action. Failing that, 2023 would be a year of even more woe for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Unless we put together an urgent rescue act, we are all staring into a precipice of more suffering, business closures, malnutrition of our most vulnerable, and migration of our people away from a land of raging crime and economic desperation. In this rescue act, we must determine sustainable livelihood. We must ensure that there is a push for physically and digitally connecting our society. We must have a clear and precise investment opportunity. We must use knowledge as a target for key investment opportunities. Our main focus going into 2023 must be our food situation, provision of water, our energy agreements, our health issues in our nation's hospital, our national security, and clearly one of the key social threads in managing crime is our education. The government must improve its relationship with private sector and civic society to raise the level of trust and acceptance, which is at an all-time low. We need to access affordable financing, which must be multi-sourced. Our policy must increase national savings, get private sector finance on board. We must find ways to access more concessional financing in terms of dealing with our green and climate change resilience prospects. In other words, we need to have a complete financial re-engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, as we start this year, we, the loyal opposition, will continue to act on behalf of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We will continue to monitor this government, their behavior, the way how they continue to mismanage all our sectors with no plan, with no clear vision to move Trinidad and Tobago out of the dire situation that we find ourselves in. And we will continue to do our jobs as legislators in Trinidad and Tobago. So we continue to urge the government to act now before it is too late. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, MP Parry, for a very comprehensive overview of the situation that we are facing with respect to our economy. I also would like to add my voice to what you said. I believe you spoke about the inaction by the government on elementary matters, and you are seeing this across the board. And so you cannot expect a government that is incapable of solving small problems, the cleaning of water courses, for example, the upgrade of our road infrastructure, the maintenance of simple things like roads, which is day to day the most mundane task of an executive, that they find themselves incapable of completing and executing to even a satisfactory manner, how can we expect them to solve big problems? How can they talk about diversification? How can they talk about finding new spaces to bring income into this country? How can you talk about the reform of a curriculum or an education sector that speaks to jobs of the future, employability of the students who are in our schools right now, when this government has been incapable of getting our children physically to school because they've been unable to maintain our road network? And that is where we are, Trinidad and Tobago. Today, as the shadow on education matters, we have had 4 days to process the reopening of the school term for the 2022-2023 academic year. We are coming off of our Christmas break. We have had the physical reopening of school in the later half of 2022, and we've seen matters arising from the government's complete inability, absolute incompetence when it comes to the education sector. And so I want to start my contribution to today's press briefing looking at what has happened simply over the last 4 days and grounding today's analysis in a post by the Minister of Education. The Minister of Education sought to sing praises for the work of the Ministry of Education in a snapshot of the 2022 achievements, a Facebook post that the minister would have made to give the population some sort of comfort that we're going somewhere in our education sector. And so we'll be taking a look at that, which will show us exactly why the education sector continues to be in the shambles that it has been over the past 7 years. Trinidad and Tobago. School reopened on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. Like most of the nation, we all looked on with hope that our students would fare better as MP Parry raised the high cost of living, the cost of living crisis that we're facing. Parents are not immune to this. As a matter of fact, they are facing the full brunt of this increasing cost of living. The cost of going back to school, of simply getting your children to school, is astronomical. The collapse of our road network, for example, has also led to increased transportation costs. And so, when you are looking at what parents have to go through in order to get their children to school, when we think about that and we saw a number of schools, 12 schools, some of them closed for things like the road network, the Caratal RC School, the Brasso Venado Government Primary School, those children physically could not get to their schools because the roads have collapsed. This is a government that has been speaking about an all-of-government approach. Where is all of the government when it comes to dealing with simple matters like maintaining the road network? You've had the Karapichaima West Secondary School and the Marabella North Secondary School not being able to open, one for infrastructural works. The school is simply a safety hazard. They physically cannot be present in a building that is not fit for purpose. And the Marabella North Secondary School, who did not have water. 2023, when you have the Prime Minister promising us a better year, and you have schools that don't have water so students cannot attend. And that is where we are right now. And that takes me to December 31st, 2022, where the Minister of Education, the person charged with steadying the ship with progress in the education sector, posted a very lengthy Facebook post. I assume it is meant as proper communication with the public. But if you took a look at that, a critical look at what the minister has herself considered an achievement, you will understand that the significant lowering of the bar over the past 7 years, that this government has taken us from being world leaders in ICT in schools, from a space where we would have had record levels of achievement at the primary school level, at the secondary school level, even looking at universal early childhood care. From a conversation during the 2010 to 2015 period, where we were looking at the best results in 2014 that this country has ever seen, where we've been looking at a country that has raised the bar and created a space where our academic potential is being fulfilled by the next generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians, to a Minister of Education telling the population it is an achievement that they have been able to implement a vacation revision program. What made this vacation revision program even necessary? Why do we have a vacation revision program? Because in 2022, the government, after being told for 2 years, from 2020, 2021, that the provisions they have put in place for students during the COVID-19 pandemic were not only inadequate and insufficient, that they've been unable to meet the needs of our students. We saw the results of that. Startling results at the SCA level, startling results at the CSEC level, at the CAPE level. And the vacation revision program was a response to an response of an incompetent government to say we have failed a group of students at the SCA level, so that the results, we had a significant percentage of the population not being able to get 30%, not 50%, 30% at the SCA level. And we had to find a way to cope. And the minister is telling us in a careful assessment of 2022 that it is an achievement of the ministry to be reactionary. And so can we expect better in 2023? Can we expect better in 2023 when the persons charged with the crafting of the strategy, with the implementation of the strategy, cannot take a careful assessment of what went wrong from 2015 to 2022? We have seen over the past 7-8 years a systematic dismantling of programs and policies proven to work. The results of the 2014 examination period bear out what I'm saying as fact, that the policies that were put in place under the People's Partnership were working. We saw the dismantling of the laptop program, and then we have the Minister of Education praising the Ministry of Education for distributing 7,000 laptops. A program that gave out laptops in the tens of thousands to ensure that every student had equitable access to online education. They dismantled it, lowered the bar, and are now praising themselves. For the government that met a technical vocational program in 2015 that allowed that if you had been an apprentice, that you have a skill set that you've learned and that you can demonstrate your competence in that, you can go in and get your certification. Think about what that means for everyday Trinidadians and Tobagonians. We all know it. If you are growing up in small communities and you have a village mechanic, for example, a village hairstylist, for example, and you learn from them. So perhaps you are not academically inclined, but you have a skill set that is marketable, that you can become an entrepreneur and income earner, contributing to the overall development of Trinidad and Tobago. You could have gone in and gotten your certification. They dismantled that, and now the Minister of Education is telling us that it is an achievement at the end of 2022 that her ministry has sought the approval of the Trinidad and Tobago National Qualifications Framework for Standardized Learning Outcomes. Let's put that into context. You met something that is equal to what you are trying to do now, that was working then. You dismantled it, you removed it completely. And in 2022, you are celebrating an approval of something that you dismantled as an accomplishment. If you go through this list, long as it may be, it is absolutely devoid of any substance. The sheer number of approvals, the approval, for example, the approval for after-school revision lessons, again, a program that they met in 2015 that they figured there was not enough money for when they found money for other things, something that they scrapped that they're trying to bring back. You have an approval for that, an approval to institute the vacation revision programs from Standard 4, an approval for retraining, all of these approvals. They are suggesting to us as citizens of this country that we must accept that an approval from the ministry means that there will be implementation by said ministry. Imagine that in 2022, after almost 8 years of this PNM administration, an administration that has an implementation deficit like no other, an administration that has been incapable from going from what is said to what is actually done, you want us to be comforted by approvals. Well, I say to the Minister of Education, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because on your list of achievements, on your same list of achievements, you are telling us that you have had over 500 schools where infrastructure work has taken place. And yet still we have students who are unable to go to attend physical school this week because infrastructural works had not been completed. And so what is the truth? Is it the truth that we are living where our students are going to buildings where concrete slabs can collapse on their head? Or is it what you are saying that you have the approval for the money? Let us be realistic and let us be sensible in our thinking. When you talk about an approval or an achievement where an online SEA results portal was operationalized, but no word to a very wary population as to what we can expect when these students sit SEA in March of 2023. So what good does it do us to get results online if our students are not passing the exam? What good does it do us as a population when you can talk about the fact that you have an approval for a school discipline matrix when we see videos of students fighting in schools? What good does it do a population if you tell us you have a support, you have a space now where you can support the Teaching Service Commission to expedite the filling of vacancies for teachers, etc., when you were the Minister of Education that told us do not apply because there is no room for you. But you are still the same Minister of Education that is telling us that there are spaces in schools that are not filled. So what is the truth? What is the truth? Trinidad and Tobago, we are looking, as MP Parry rightfully raised, at a crisis in the present. But what we are seeing from our education sector is a crisis in the future. The inability to solve these problems, the unwillingness to accept that there are problems in the first instance, the fact that you can talk about schools that you are looking to open in 2023 are the same schools that you kept closed since 2015. The fact that the education and training sector has consistently figured in the top 5 of the budgetary allocation for every budget under your administration, and yet still we cannot see, we do not feel the results of this spending. It says to us there's a problem, and the problem is at the very top. The problem is the management of our education sector. We've seen the change in the Minister of Education from Garcia to the current minister, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly. And we have seen no change in the impact. We have seen the change in the rhetoric, but no change in the effect. And so that you can list as an accomplishment the visiting of 150 schools, but you can't tell us what those visits have done for the students. That you can list approval for the introduction of online literacy and numeracy solutions, but you can't tell us whether or not our students are going to be able to competently take the SEA exam looking at both literacy and numeracy in 2023. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we take a look at the education sector, as our students remain physically unable to go to school for problems that are solely under the remit of the executive of Trinidad and Tobago. That you can have teachers at the St. Joseph Secondary School drive out of the school compound because of safety issues. This is coming out of a space where at the end of 2022, we saw videos of school children ducking from bullets outside their school. And I say that to say that we have already known, that we would have already had the information, the data, the evidence that there is a problem, that our crime situation that has spiraled out of control already has been impacting our school system. And then this government continues to bury its head in the sand and not put anything in place. So if you knew in 2022 that gang activity, that criminal activity has been affecting our school system in the form of Rose Hill Primary School, and then in early part of 2023, the teachers at St. Joseph Secondary School have to say the same thing to you. It means that your inability to recognize a problem and move from a problem to a solution is creating an untenable situation in every sector across Trinidad and Tobago. That somebody has to tell you again, put more measures around secondary schools, primary schools that are in zones that you must know. That the Minister of National Security clearly does not talk to the Minister of Education, sharing any data as to where criminal activity is at its height, in which school districts, that you can have increased police posts, that you can create a safe environment for learning, that they are incapable of doing basic things. Basic things. It shows you why we have a problem across every sector. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on the 2023, the rest of the academic year in 2023, we in the United National Congress continue not only to hope for the best for our children, but we continue to hone our policies, again, that we knew worked. We continue to think about things like ensuring, once we take office, that our education policies are sound. We have a proven track record in the education sector. We have the results to show it. We have been thinking about things like cognitive learning. How do you assess the learning of the students, how they learn, and therefore creating a system where you thrive, not just survive. We have a proven track record of showing a nation how to tap into your potential and create a visionary society. And as I look on at the list of achievements that the Minister of Education has put forward, I shudder to think, what is the expectation? What are the outcomes that they expect? Because we are seeing over and over that you insist that the lowering of the bar is how you will meet your target. And we find that to be unacceptable to the children of Trinidad and Tobago. So we will continue to pay attention to the education sector. We continue to be available as members of parliament to our constituents, where you face issues with school transportation, where you face issues with the inability of getting your children to school, to be your advocates and your representatives inside and outside of the parliament. And I thank you. Senator Mark.
Thank you very much, Anita. Good morning to members of the media. I am very happy to join my colleagues Rushton and Anita this morning to address some extremely pressing national issues confronting our nation. Trinidad and Tobago, our nation, is in trouble. Trinidad and Tobago is facing grave and predictable dangers. Our economy, as you have been told, is in a state of almost permanent depression. Our education system has been watered down. And the latest incursion has to do with what I would like to describe as the frontal and brazen assault and attack on our sacred document, the supreme law of the land, known as our Constitution, where in its very structure there is the principle of the separation of powers outlined in the very structure and construction of our Constitution. We have a situation in which there are certain critical offices outlined in this very important document. One of those offices is the presidency. This morning, I would like to look, as I examine some of the critical responsibilities and constitutional duties of this very important office. I would like to look at the important role of the office holder in this regard. So the issue of credibility is very critical to this office and any holder who occupies it. I also would like to look at what I call the naked hypocrisy of the Prime Minister as it relates to his nominee and justification advanced for same. And the whole issue of perception of impartiality versus the obscenity that we are experiencing today. If we are not careful, the president's house can become the new Balizé house. Like Burnham did in Guyana when he was in full control, we have our own Papa Doc, Keith Rowley, who is about to hoist on President's house the Balizé flag, fluttering in the wind as they seek to establish a full authoritarian state in our beloved republic. These are real challenges and dangers that we face as a nation. Not only is our Constitution under attack and assault, our very democracy, rights and freedoms, and our ability to hold free and fair elections in our nation. All of these matters are in danger. Members of the media, when we examine the constitutional duties and responsibilities of the presidency and whoever occupies that office, you will understand the concern of the loyal opposition. whoever is in that office has to exercise a certain authority. And that authority that is being exercised must be exercised with a certain degree of impartiality, free of political influences, must be non-partisan, and must not be dictated to by extraneous circumstances. Can we say this would happen under the stewardship of an active politician in Christine Kangaloo, who has made it very clear publicly that she wants us, the people, to spread the gospel of the PNM according to the teachings of Eric Williams, Manning, and Rowley through our villages and communities? Can we be assured of fairness, impartiality, independence, unbiasedness by this incoming nominee of the PNM, Christine Kangaloo, a card-carrying member of the ruling party, an out-and-out PNM acolyte and apostle? Can we expect this, members of the public, members of our nation, citizens of our republic? Let us look, therefore, at the responsibilities and duties under the Constitution that this new office holder has to carry out. And you tell me, members of the public, brothers and sisters, whether we can expect to have and to witness impartiality, independence, fairness, and unbiasedness. The President of the Republic has the responsibility to appoint 9 independent senators. 9 independent senators. We have a Senate of 31 members, 16 appointed by the Prime Minister, 9 appointed by the President, and 6 appointed by the Leader of the Opposition. Can we expect the incoming active politician, sitting parliamentarian, Christine Kangaloo, and I will give you some examples of her conduct while she acted as president, for you to think as it relates to impartiality, balance, independence, impartiality. Those 9 independent senators that the incoming president, who is going to be elected by a simple majority on the 20th of January, do you expect that president, who is a card-carrying member of the PNM, to be impartial in her decision-making? Or are we to expect, out of the 9 independent senators, at least 4 of them to be PNM card-carrying members, if we want to be conservative, if we want to be gracious, and if we want to be generous, out of the 9? You know what it takes to pass a special piece of legislation in our parliament? Constitutionally, 3/5 majority is needed. You know this 3/5 of 31? 19. The PNM has 15 on their bench. And there are 9 independent senators, so-called, behind us. All you need is 4 to make it 19 to pass a special constitutional majority piece of legislation. Ladies and gentlemen, when you appoint an active politician coming from the PNM, what can we expect? What can we predict? Can we predict 4 of those 9 or 6 of those 9 would have on their forehead the insignia PNM, and therefore the government will be able to install for the next 2 years and be assured of the passage of special legislation that requires a constitutional majority of 3/5. I ask you to think about the implications of placing an active sitting politician in the chair of this exalted office of President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Members, citizens of our republic, the President appoints the Chief Justice. Think about what is going to happen in this country if the PNM has a president and that PNM president has the power to appoint a Chief Justice. Already the people of this country are saying the judiciary has been hijacked by the PNM, by the failure of the government to appoint a tribunal under 137 of our Constitution to inquire into the conduct of the current Chief Justice. So if you have a president who is a card-carrying member of the PNM and who is on public record as calling on the people to spread the gospel and teachings of the PNM through our homes, villages, and communities, what is that president going to do when she is in office? She was just a candidate calling on us to spread the gospel. She is acting president, and we saw her conduct in the case of Jawala Rambaran and what she did. And a court judgment condemned the president of the republic for breaching the Constitution, violating the rights of Jawala Rambaran to the protection of the law, which is guaranteed under sections 4 and 5 of our Constitution. And this is a lawyer. Christine Kangaloo is a lawyer, a qualified lawyer. And when she got this document to sign the death warrant for Jawala, didn't Christine Kangaloo, acting president, qualified lawyer, couldn't think, couldn't analyze, couldn't really go through this document carefully to see that this was an unlawful act being executed by the government, and they wanted you as the acting president to sign off on it? Couldn't the president, acting president at that time, see this? No, she didn't see that. You know why? Because Christine Kangaloo, acting as president, is a yes woman. She's a rubber stamp, a puppet. So if she's a puppet of the PNM acting as president, what would she be when she's permanently installed as president for the next 5 years until 2028? Could you understand what is going on here? members of the public, citizens of our republic, we are going on the road of a dictatorship. We have a local Forbes Burnham in the Prime Minister of this country. We have a local Gary in the Prime Minister of this country. They are trying to establish a totalitarian, authoritarian, dictatorial state, almost a one-party state in our country. You know who will now be appointing all the commissioners to sit on the Elections and Boundaries Commission of our country? It will be Christine Kangaloo, who is an active politician, who asked us to spread the gospel and teachings of the PNM in all our homes and communities and villages. So would this country have free and fair elections under the Christine Kangaloo regime? This is a very serious matter that we are dealing with. This could determine whether this country will have stability in the future. This is going to determine whether we will remain as a united country or whether we will have to go to war to ensure that our freedoms and rights are not snatched away from us by criminals in high office. This is a very serious matter, members of the public. How can a sitting prime minister impose such an individual on in this exalted office, knowing fully well the conduct of this individual and the relationship? Not only the Elections and Boundaries Commission, the Auditor General, the President appoints. All members of the Public Service Commission, all members of the Teaching Service Commission, all members of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, all members of the Police Service Commission, the Law Reform Commission. So are we now going to see these independent institutions becoming PNM party branches? Is the Public Service Commission to become a party group of the PNM? Is the Police Service Commission to be transformed into a party branch, a party group? Because nobody would be able to get appointed to these bodies under a president who is an active card-carrying member of the ruling PNM party. Because if that acting president, who is to become the permanent president, could not even contemplate reserving her position until the substantive president returned, knowing that the act was unlawful. No, what did she do? She signed the death warrant for Jawala Rambaran. And the courts of Trinidad and Tobago has ruled the action taken by Christine Kangaloo, acting president of the Republic, is illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional. You breach the rights of Jawala. Anyone with an iota of principle and dignity and civility would have tendered your resignation. I have the judgment before me. I have it here. So members of the public, let us be real. We are in danger. Trinidad and Tobago is in danger because of the actions of a despot whose only concern is power, control, power and control. Today I want to ask the acting commissioner of police. It has been rumored, and we want clarification from you, that the government has given you an undertaking as acting commissioner of police to make you commissioner of police. And you have been given the keys to the residence of the commissioner of police. That is what we have been told, and we call on Earl Christopher to clear the air on this matter, because it has been rumored. And to get that post of commissioner of police, find something on Gary Griffith and arrest him. That is what is being rumored. Because you remember the Prime Minister, the local Papa Doc. I am christening Keith Rowley today as Papa Doc, the local Papa Doc. And what this man is interested in is total, absolute power. Look what he did when he breached and broke and violated our Constitution. Look what he did. He invaded President's house, handed a report to Bliss C. Prasad, causing her to take back the merit list that the president received, and the president was supposed to send to the parliament. Gary Griffith was number 1 on that list. What business does the Prime Minister have speaking directly with the chairman of the Police Service Commission? That's a breach of the Constitution. It is unlawful what the Prime Minister did. Unlawful, unconstitutional. He broke the law. He should be in jail. Instead of that, he comes now to transform the presidency into Balize House, so that whatever he wants, whatever the PNM wants, they believe they will have a puppet. They will have somebody who is a rubber stamp president, a hack of the PNM, to carry out their duties and their dirty responsibilities, so that they can continue to hold on to power and assassinate politically all their opponents. Who they arrest, they will try to discredit, because they want to be in power forever. Members of the media, I want to deal with what I call the hypocrisy of Papa Doc Rowley. Papa Doc Rowley told Trinidad and Tobago in 2013, and I have the articles here, members of the media. I have the articles, where Papa Doc told Trinidad and Tobago in 2013. Look at here. Trinidad Guardian, no, Trinidad Express, Sunday Express, no, Saturday Express, 2nd of February 2013. Look at here. When the time came for a new president in 2013, Dr. Rowley wrote to the Prime Minister, then Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and he made it very clear that the PNM will never support a sitting member of parliament to be president. Let me quote for you what he told him. Through his chief whip, Marlene MacDonald, she said, and I quote, "We have reiterated our position that we will not," listen to the language, "we will not support any sitting parliamentarian for that office. Look at here. Look at here. In 2013, Rowley, as leader of the opposition, said he will never support a sitting parliamentarian to be president of the republic. Is Christine Kangaloo standing? Is she standing or is she lying down? I don't know. But you said sitting. You did not even say serving. A gang runs our country today, headed by a criminal. A criminal gang runs our country today, ladies and gentlemen. And all they are concerned about is thieving our resources by not proclaiming the procurement law, recruiting, in inverted commas, the judiciary to prolong it and to kill it. If you look at the epistle written by the judiciary, 29 pages long, and all they did was to attack procurement and say it's good. We're not supporting it. You must amend it. That is what they have said in essence. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to warn Trinidad and Tobago that the current administration, led by Papa Doc Rowley, constitutes a clear and present danger to our democratic health in this country. And we will fight, we will march, we will do all that is necessary to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago is never transformed into Gary Grenada, Burnham, Guyana. We want to ensure. So we look forward to your support in the coming period. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll pause at this time, and any issues or questions you'd like to raise, we would welcome.
MP, there are some questions coming in. MP Parry, you mentioned the rising costs in electricity rates for commercial users. How many SMEs would you estimate will be affected by these rising costs?
All. As a matter of fact, no SME will be left unscathed.
Well, can you give us a...
Well, for those that have survived, you know, I mean, if we make a conservative amount of 50%, I mean, you're talking about over 3,000 small businesses that employs over 10,000 people. So it is going to impact in terms of the cost of operations. You know, when you look at your cost to operate versus your cost of salaries, wages, you know, taxes, the impending property tax, it is all going to come up and put undue pressure on small businesses. And small businesses is critical for the development of any community, of any village, of any country. And that is where it becomes scary.
So is that your view that the SMEs are going to struggle to these costs? Like, and if so, how many do you think will actually close out of this 2000?
I mean, it's difficult to give a precise number, but if, according to the data that was presented by the regional Confederation of Business Association, that the pandemic shut down 6,000, I dare to imagine what this slew of rate increases, water, power, property tax, fuel costs in 2023 is going to cause these remaining businesses. It is going to be devastating for a small business sector.
You said that we're probably heading into a crisis this year. The Prime Minister, however, believes that 2023 will be a good year, predicts that this will be the year in which we emerge from the crisis.
Well, he's basing that squarely on the information by the Minister of Finance, based on increased energy revenue. And if you look at the last central bank report, where they estimate increased revenue in energy prices till 2024, but yet in 2024 they still see a deficit at the end of 2024. What that tells me that there is going to be poor policy making and poor policy decision to take increased energy revenue and still end up in a deficit position at the end of 2024. Which right-thinking government and Minister of Finance will boast of that? And when you look, I mean, we continue to depend on energy rents for everything. But what about the deficit in our non-energy sector? Not a policy has been spoken about. Not a policy is being put in place to deal with that. And that is where the uncertainty of 2023 is going to sting us in the tail, when you have this silence from the administration in dealing with these matters.
Do you have a comment on recent action by the Ministry of Finance in removing taxes on CCTV cameras?
Oh, I mean, after what did it take? 600 murders? Did it take 600 murders to do that? And all it would have taken was 5 minutes of legislative time to put a legal notice in place for that. The horse is out of the stable. But my question is, the police commissioner has spoken about the scanners on the port. What have we done? What have we done to deal with the issues of the importation of illegal arms and ammunition, contraband goods through our ports? Millions of dollars, and there is no word on the scanners on the ports. That is what he should be addressing this morning. The horse is out of the stable already. 600 murders would have, caused us to get this tax rebate on our CCTV cameras. That is nothing to be boasting about this morning, Darren.
MP Haynes, there appears to be some discrepancy between Tutor and the Ministry of Education on the exact number of schools that remain closed during this past week. Do you have any information on how many schools were actually able to reopen and how many actually were closed?
So the People's National Movement has a tendency to, and you saw it under the previous Minister of Education, Anthony Garcia, that if the door to the school was opened, even if no students attended, they counted it as a school being opened. And so you always get that kind of clever use of language as to what constitutes an open school. So if you were open for 10 minutes, for example, and then had to close because of water issues, you would have been considered open on the 3rd. And so that's where you're finding the discrepancy, or it's really more of an intellectual dishonesty. And so the space that Tutor is coming from is that they're reporting from teachers and students what actually happened on the school day. And therefore, from the ministry, what you're getting is a clever use of language as what constitutes open. The information will still be coming in terms of some schools would have opened on the 3rd and had to close on the 4th because they were not fit for purpose. Similarly, you'd see what happened at the St. Joseph Secondary School, where the school was open, but the teachers had to leave because of safety and security issues. So it is an ongoing situation as to which schools or students are able to attend in this academic term.
You mentioned St. Joseph Secondary School. The Minister of Education has said that the recent fear of robberies at that school was due to overgrown grass located near the school. she said that grass has since been cut and cleared. Do you think that is enough to alleviate the teachers at school?
Again, so what we're looking at, who is also responsible for the cutting of the grass in and around these spaces? And that's what I'm talking about, a government that can't even communicate with itself, that you can't get simple things done like cutting of grass. Literally, that is where we're at right now. And so, do I think that's sufficient? No. Is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Could it have been something done during the vacation period? Absolutely. Is it an everyday circumstance of the services that government perform, whether at a local level or at a central level? Also, yes. And so, for you to come to tell us that it is overgrown bushes, so that a space where criminals can hide around a school, it shows you the exact state of affairs in our country. That grass is what is stumping this government from getting day-to-day activities on go.
You mentioned the vacation revision program. Has there been any data from the Ministry of Education as to the success of that program and how many students have improved their grades?
No, we had. I had asked a question in Parliament during the last set of parliamentary sittings in December. The minister was unable to give an answer and has asked for the question to be posed again, which I intend to do. Because at the end of the day, the statistics and the data that we need to make careful assessments about what is going on in our country must come from the government. And the absence of data shows that they are not using any data to drive our policy making, which is a very scary situation. It means we're shooting in the dark and hoping for a positive outcome. And so, again, as the opposition, the United National Congress, I intend to file the question again in Parliament and hope that the government really understands that there's a role for accountability and transparency in the affairs of this nation and not treat it like the dictatorship they surely intend for us to become.
You mentioned that infrastructural issues were also affecting students. Can you tell us how many students or how many schools are currently affected by these infrastructural issues?
At the last information that I had coming in to me by concerned citizens within that space, that there were some 350 tickets. So what you have is that schools report infrastructural concerns to the ministry, and then the ministry has to put in the paperwork and the approvals to get this work done. And at the middle of the last term, the term from September to December, you had of that 350. Something like only 45 schools getting any work and the work not being done to completion. But the tickets, so they're being marked as complete. And so the minister is reporting it as completed, but the work actually not being done. And so, again, the information coming to us is that the ministry is engaging in a system of checking boxes without completing the work. And you see it in spaces like the Marabello North Secondary School, which has been a sort of construction zone. But because the work has started, they're marking it as complete, and again putting our students in great concern.
Senator Mark, you mentioned the issue with regards to Christine Kangaloo and the former governor of the Central Bank, Joel Arambura. Do you think that perhaps in light of the court judgment in that matter, that Ms. Kangaloo should explain her decision to remove Mr. Arambura during that time?
Well, I will put it this way. In light of that decision taken by the then acting president and the subsequent judgment harshly condemning that decision and action, I think that the Prime Minister, conscious of the fact you want to put somebody in that office who exercises impartiality, some degree of, independence, balance, fairness. I think the Prime Minister should do the honorable thing at this time and withdraw her nomination. I think her nomination should be withdrawn in light of the harsh words of condemnation handed down by the courts of Trinidad and Tobago as it concerns her unlawful, illegal, and unconstitutional actions against Joala Rambaran.
That's all the questions we have.
Okay. Thank you to the members of the media, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, who tune in every Sunday for our press briefing. We, as have been stated by all of my colleagues, will stand in firm defense of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so you can tune into our UNC platforms as we continue to raise issues pertinent to national development. Thank you again very much.